Alright boys, so it's time to finish the intake and install the catch can. Now some of you might be wondering, what exactly is a catch can and what does it do? Well, this is a catch can. I attempted to make one of these on my own and failed miserably, so I decided to purchase this one on eBay. I believe it was right around $20. Actually, I think it was a little less. It's made of aluminum and it feels, well, it feels durable, but not the most expensive, nicest part I've ever held in my hand. It came with a variety of clamps. Some of these hose clamps are mine, but it came with a couple of different mounts. One is curved, one is straight, right angle mount, a hose clamp, and this piece of hose that looks more like water line than fuel or oil line. I'm not really sure why they sent this. Maybe it is petroleum resistant, I'm not really sure. If I do use any of this, it'll only be a very small fractional little piece. So what exactly does this little catch can do and how does it benefit the motor? Well, it's fairly simple actually. What you've basically got is a PCV system here, and what it's doing is venting crankcase emissions and blow-by from the cylinder, and it kind of collects into the PCV valve system, and the pressure, it's a one-way valve inside the PCV system, and it allows the pressure to pass through this tube. And what happens sometimes, as you've seen to me, is oil will actually get through the PCV system at high RPMs, or when windage affects the flow of the oil, or centrifugal force, things of that nature. You can get splooges of oil coming through the PCV system. Now this thing basically has an inlet and an outlet, and you would attach the inlet side to the outlet side of your PCV valve, and what that does is any excess oil that is burped up through the system will settle down into the bottom of this can. You can see it's even got a little drain down there so you can remove the oil, and it's actually even got a little meter on there so you can see when you get a lot of oil in there. The outlet here on the other side, this will allow fresh, clean air to pass through the PCV system and into your intake. So any oil that is burped by the PCV system collects in the bottom of the can and does not harm your intake or carburetor system at all, and won't spew oil into the engine, so it will have to be burned off by the cylinder. Now, since I've already modified my intake to accommodate such a system, all I had to do was actually remove my top cover, and I welded in a couple of bolts that actually came with the catch can. I welded them in for underneath for a couple of reasons. Number one, you can't really get a wrench on this bottom side to hold these bolts as you tighten the whole system down. And number two, I'm seriously worried about these nuts coming undone with vibration. I am going to put them on with Loctite. I should be using the blue, but all I've got is the red. But I'm afraid of these nuts loosening and dropping the bolts down into the flywheel blower housing and causing mass chaos inside of my engine. But the installation is very simple. All I'm going to have to do is fit my curved mount piece to the top of my engine blower housing right there. I will attach my catch can with my hose clamp to the mounting bracket, and I will run some, I've got this polyurethane or nylon hose. I wasn't really sure if this stuff was going to hold up an ethanol fuel or oil, so I actually did a little experiment with it. Right here you can see I've got a couple pieces of that tubing. This one is sitting in some gasoline, and it's been sitting here for a few days. And this one is sitting in some straight 5W30, and it's also been sitting here for a few days. And I don't have a hardness tester, but I can tell you that's still really hard to squeeze. Now this has only been a few days, and these won't be sitting submerged in gas or oil, but they will have the potential to be in contact with such fluids, so I decided to experiment and see how this stuff would hold up, if it would break down in the ethanol. So far, after a few days, totally submerged in gasoline, it seems to hold up just fine, so I think I'll be okay to run it on my PCV system. If it starts to break down and warp or mess up over time or turn yellow, I'll be sure to update you guys on that, but for right now, I think it'll serve me just fine. So the first thing we're going to do is actually physically mount the catch can to the blower housing, and that's pretty easy. You just bolt the mounting plate down to the two studs I welded onto the blower housing, and once those are in place, I can go ahead and run the hose clamp around the catch can and attach that to the mounting plate as well. As you can see, once it's all in place, it's actually pretty sturdy. I had my doubts, but it seems like it'll hold up pretty well. Once the catch can's actually physically installed, I can attach some of my hard nylon tubing to the outlet side of my PCV system and run that nylon tubing up to the intake side of the catch can. Once the outlet side of the PCV system is hooked up, I'm going to hook the outlet side of the catch can up to the intake, and that is done with the same piece of hard plastic tubing. And I'll be using a piece of that weird waterline tubing as an adapter just to attach to my intake. Hopefully this stuff doesn't rot off in the long run, but we'll see. And that's pretty much it. I'm sure it won't take long for these white plastic lines to get completely covered in oily nastiness. But I think it'll work the way I'm planning on. It's nice that it's a sealed system. I know some of these actually have a separate PCV breather air filter on the top. But in my case, it's probably not good to have that because it's just another way for water, dirt, and debris to enter my crankcase oil system. It's kind of funny. It almost looks a little too blingy for this tractor. Lots of shiny stuff. I'll have to take it out and get it covered in shit so it doesn't look so out of place. Let's try firing her up and seeing how nasty she gets. So right here on the outlet side of my PCV breather, you can actually see a little bit of oil that's already been produced just by me sitting here for a few minutes revving the motor. So that's basically oil that would have been dumped down into my intake had I not installed this system. Probably from high RPMs like I mentioned earlier, but I do like these hard plastic lines because they won't collapse when they get hot or when there's extreme vacuum, which obviously this system's not going to have extreme vacuum. But I'm a big fan of hard lines. Whenever you can run hard lines, it's a good idea. I'd love to run hard fuel lines and just rubber connectors if I can someday. That's one modification I've always thought about doing, but pretty neat, pretty easy install. On the catch can itself, you can still see the gauge. It's just behind the motor, hidden away, and you can get to the drain pretty easily here on the bottom. As you can just unscrew this bad boy and put a little bowl or a dish under here and drain the oil out into it. You can do it right as you're draining your engine oil since it's very close proximity to that. So it's pretty sweet. You can't really see the PCV breather catch can system from outside of the tractor. It all fits really neatly under the hood. Everything clears very nicely. Yeah, overall I'm very pleased with the setup. Very simple install, especially if your intake system accommodates for it. Not a bad idea if you're running high RPMs and lots of G-force in your motor or whatever you're doing. That's going to be it for this video. Very simple, quick, easy installation. Hopefully this thing does exactly what I want it to. It looks like it's going to, so I'm sure the Murray will really appreciate this modification. Thanks for watching, you guys. Please rate, comment, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next video.